gentlemen, special day today, folks. Welcome back to In the Zone. Today, as we promised, we were going to have some really good guests for you, but today I think we knocked it out of the park because today we have with us special guest Kenny Anderson, and we're just going to roll through a couple of the Mr. Chibs is one of the nicknames, but Kenny is a young man that I had the privilege to coach at Archbishop Molloy High School, where he played for the great Jack Curran, on to Georgia Tech to play for Bobby Cremins, and then into the NBA. And we got a lot of Celtics fans that follow us on the show. Kenny, welcome. How about you doing today?
Doing well, Coach Sutter. Thanks for having me on. It's a pleasure, man, talking to you.
It's awesome to speak with you. I'm just going to go out and call it right now. This, ladies and gentlemen, is the GOAT. When we talk about GOAT, we have greatest players of all time. This is the GOAT of point guards in all of New York City, all of New York State history. Hands down, it is not even close. I'll throw Pearl Washington into a conversation, but that's as far as I go. We have Kenny Smith, Mark Jackson. New York City is known for its point guards like Texas is known for its running backs. If you're in New York City and you're a point guard and you've gone through everything that this young man went through in his basketball career, there's no question that we call him the GOAT in New York City. Kenny, what does that mean?
It means everything. Growing up in New York, where I started playing basketball, and my mentor Vincent Smith, uh, Pierre Turner. It's just to go back now that it's all over. I'm not playing now. To go back to get the love, that I get far as playing basketball and being the greatest in the city. It's an ongoing accomplishment, man. That I just thank God, for. And I know my mother's, in a grave. She passed away 2006, but she wanted me to play the game that I love, and that was basketball, and to be one of the best. And that's what happened. So it was awesome.
So I know I'm old school. So let's start with Joan. Let's start right there, Mom. I remember her at our games, and I remember she was an absolute force of nature.
Yeah,
Wonderful, wonderful woman. She loved you so dearly. Tell us,
yeah.
tell us about that a little bit.
Oh, my mom was an ace in the hole for me. I got her out of the ghetto of Left Rack City, and
Awesome.
plugged the right way. She said, when I go into Malloy, do my schoolwork, and play basketball and just enjoy the environment that was around me, not just basketball. So, and then Jack Curran, Coach Jack Curran, the legend. It was great playing for him, playing for all my coaches. Vincent Smith. I learned something new every day when I went into the building of Archbishop Malloy. I went there from 7:30 in the morning. I left at 9:30 at night. Because we had practice at 3, 4. I do my homework, everything in the library, and when I went home, I was going to sleep, and boom, right back at it. So it was just growing up in the Left Rack City and playing for Malloy was just awesome, man. It was just awesome for me.
That's credible. I remember your mother well, and she absolutely adored you and loved you. Let's
Yeah,
just go backward a little bit with Vincent, and let's talk
yeah,
about Coach Curran a little bit. Vincent, obviously, Lost Battalion, Queens
yeah.
basketball. It's the mecca, really. It's one of the five boroughs where it really. I'm from the Bronx, but you got to give Queens its due. There's just some unbelievable basketball that have come out of Queens. Talk about Vince for a second and his influence on you in your young life.
Oh, without him, there's no me, as far as at all.
100%.
So we worked extremely hard in the off season. I would go to Lost Battalion Hall because of the winners. The winners, and he'd be like, "We'll work out for 2 hours," and then he'll say, go play," and then I played pickup ball in the Lost Battalion Hall. Played in Left Rack City, all the parks in Queens, Manhattan, all the parks of the boroughs of New York. I played in, but I would always work out before, and then I would, go and do the things that we worked out on. So, it made me real special. A lot of the young men that I grew up with wasn't doing that. It was just really basketball, being a good young man and just going home, going back to left track.
So we're going to talk about Coach Curran for a second, but I'm going to introduce people to my first introduction to you.
Yeah,
And there was a New York Post article that had
yeah,
detailed you as the next great point guard. You were only a
yeah,
freshman at Archbishop Malloy.
yeah,
So I go to the city championship game, and I'm watching, and I'm a spectator. I don't join the Malloy staff until you are a sophomore. So I
yeah,
see you in your freshman year, and I go and I watch the games at Fordham University, and I'm sitting there, and they have this guy Brian or Brad Tracy, and he comes out and he starts the game, and I'm looking here.
yeah,
I go, this guy is supposed to be like the greatest thing of all time, and he doesn't even start. I mean, I'm sitting there thinking like, what's going on here? Did they overhype this young man? What happened? And so it was really Coach Curran and his special way of handling players that what we're
yes,
going to talk about right next, because what the tradition was, because you were brought up to the varsity as a freshman, and that was
yeah,
unheard of at Malloy. That wasn't
yeah,
not a lot of guys in Jack Curran's past had been brought up in their freshman year. And so, in Jack Curran's fatherly, protective way, he sat you for every first quarter of the game that year. And then you played the rest of the game. And when I saw you for the first time run to the scorer's table, I go, kind of skinny. He don't look like a. And then all of a sudden, magic happened.
yeah,
Triple double in the game
yeah,
as a freshman in a high school place where basketball was absolutely king, and it was
yeah.
that was my first time watching you play, and then for sophomore year and junior year being inside with Coach Curran. Talk about Coach a little bit, because we've talked about him a lot of times on this show. We're going to say it again. We've said it a lot of times. He belongs in the Hall of Fame. And Kenny, go ahead, give us a shot on Coach Curran.
Coach Curry, an awesome individual. Um, uh, better baseball coach, as far as wins, better baseball coach than basketball coach.
No
He just
doubt.
was a great. He just was a great man. You just you listened to everything he had to say. He knew the game of basketball. He knew how to put the team together. And then after the freshman year, after I came into practice, our practice was like set in stone. So I had to know all of that, and it was like it just worked, And practice was on point. We went over everything with detail. He's very detailish, but very good with all the players, not just me. And he told me going into my freshman year that I wouldn't play because we have a senior ahead of me. I wouldn't play my first quarter. I couldn't start. I was okay with that because I just wanted to play on a varsity team. I was just so excited. I was I'm a very humble young man. I just was excited to be playing on the Archbishop Malloy basketball team due to the fact Vincent Smith, older brother, Mitchell Malloy. So it was just like a great fit for me to be playing at Malloy High School. Not only Malloy High School basketball wise, but academically, it was a real strong, one of the best schools in the country. And I knew I had to do well academically to maintain my prestigious on the court.
One of the greatest quotes I ever heard from any of Coach Curran's players was that you just didn't want to disappoint him. You
Nah.
just didn't want to. You worked your tail off and you worked so hard because of the stature of the man, and you just didn't want to disappoint him. All right, so we had Rob Wardan, John Dunn,
Yes.
the head coach at Marist right now,
Yes.
Ralph James, Kevin McBride. Talk
Yes.
about that quartet of guys you played with in the city championship run that we had against Tollentine and Cardinal Hayes.
Yeah, those guys, we had a very good team. Uh, I think the Tollentine team, my freshman year, we won. They were probably more talented, but we was more right in line with what we had to get accomplished all year. You know what I'm saying? The discipline. We was more disciplined than they were out there on the floor.
No
And we
doubt.
pulled it off.
No
Played
doubt.
with Ralph James, Robert Rodan, John Dunn. We just had some good teams every year I played at Malloy. You know, I lost three games every year. And, you know, we won. We ran through our divisions. But my junior year was tough because Chrysler King had a tough team in Queens that year.
Right.
And then Malik Sealy beat us in the finals or something like that.
Yep. At
But,
Tallentine beat us. They had Adrian Autry, Brian Reese,
yeah,
and Malik Sealy,
yeah,
God rest his
yeah,
soul. That was a great
yeah,
team. And that was almost
yeah,
the exact same team we beat the year before when that game was
yes,
at St. John's. That
yep,
game was at
yep.
St. John's. Unbelievable. Let's talk about your recruitment. Let's talk about Georgia Tech. Bobby Cremins.
Yeah, Bobby Crimmins is another great coach. No, those are the two coaches, Jack Karen and Bobby Crimmins, that I love, you know, dearly. They was good guys. He went to All Hallows High School. He's big time. You know, he recruited me big time. Um, you know, but it wasn't until late in the game because I wanted to go to Syracuse University, but my mother went on my visit to Atlanta with me, and when we got back, she was like, "You're going to Georgia Tech." So that's where I was going. That's what I had to do. You
That's
know
a
what my
great
mother said.
story.
It really wasn't that bad of a team. I wasn't sure of them because I watched all the clips of the last team they had with Mark Price, John Sally, Bruce Dyrrell.
Right.
I knew they had Dennis Scott Brown. I wasn't sure, but Syracuse had Derek Coleman, Billy Owens. It was Sherman Douglas last year, and I was moving right in to play the point.
Wow.
And then Pearl went there, so it was big for me. You know, I was excited. You know, but you know, on the other hand, my mother knew something I didn't know.
Moms always know. Moms always
Yep.
know. When you were, I wanted to just tell people this because we were at Malloy and invariably all the mail would come into Coach Curran's office. And so all
Yeah.
the coaches, you know, would kind of sit there and the guys would come in and look and see if there was any mail for them, you know. And then we came back from Easter break and we went into Coach's office and everybody else kind of filtered in looking for their mail. And Kenny walks out with about 40 letters that were just sent by one school. I won't say the
Yeah.
school's name right now, but he turns around, looks at me, and goes, "I'm not even interested in this school." And the letters and all the stuff that just came was unbelievable. It was watching that
Yeah.
recruitment was like nothing I had ever seen before in my life. It was unbelievable. Talk about your NBA career a little bit right now. I mean, obviously at Georgia Tech we had the Final Four run. I was there
Yeah.
for a lot of that. Kevin
Yeah.
Cantwell, Bobby Cremins, both great friends. And we thought that was a good place for you too. Honestly, I wanted you to go to Duke, but they signed Hurley, and I was at
Yeah.
dinner. I was at dinner with Coach Krzyzewski and Mike Bray, and I looked at
Yeah.
them and I said, "Take them both, Bobby
Yeah.
Hurley and Kenny. Nobody will ever beat you. You'll never lose a game on a college basketball level." And
Yeah.
they kind of went and did their thing, and I thought that was a bit of a mistake on their part. I had always wished you went to Duke. I love Cremins and
Yeah.
I like those guys, but I thought you were the greatest player in a long time, in a generation. And at that
Yeah.
moment, everything was kind of trending Duke's way. Let's talk
Yeah.
about the NBA. Let's talk about the
Oh,
NBA.
oh, the NBA was fantastic. You know, I got drafted. Jack Curran came to my draft night.
I
It was
was
at
there.
Madison
I was
Square
there.
Garden. Yeah, it
I
was
was there.
awesome. Yeah, it was
Yeah.
awesome. I went number 2 in the draft, 1991, to New Jersey Nets, and it was a learning experience early because Kenny Anderson come back home somewhat, and I should have played right away, but the contract, signing took a little longer. I didn't play right away. I didn't play my first year because Bill Fitch was there, and I think he wanted Billy Owens, and Willis Reed wanted me. So it was just different. And they brought in Chuck Daly the next year, and they gave me the ball, and I was on my way. So I had the great fortune of playing with Derek Coleman, Drazen Petrovic, Chris Morris, Sam Bowie. We had a very good team, So it was awesome.
So I had a friend of mine that it was I worked at a bar in the Bronx, and I had a friend of mine who had
Yeah.
season tickets to the Nets. And
Yeah.
at the time, he would come back, and he knew of our relationship. And every
Yeah.
night he would come home, and he'd bring me the tickets to the game. And
Oh, that's awesome.
these are like 12 rows right off midcourt. They were great,
Yeah,
great
nice.
seats. So I got to see at least
Yeah.
25 of your games,
Okay.
almost every single year that you were with the Nets. And
Good.
my mother, who didn't know anything about basketball till I started playing. But then when I started coaching, she starts following everything I'm doing. And she might have been the biggest Kenny Anderson fan that there was
Wow.
in the history of the world. You could do no
That's
wrong. You could do no
yeah.
wrong in Kathleen Sutter's eyes. Okay.
Yeah, that's awesome.
There were times when I said this to people, in your senior year, you had 50 points at Malloy, over 50.
Yeah.
At different
Mhm.
times at Georgia Tech, you were able to score the ball and really, really do great things. But when
Yeah.
I think of you as a guy who just made the right play every
Yeah.
single time that was in front of him. And when you have games where you had 14 assists in the NBA
Yeah.
and also 40 plus points, I think that shows the duality of your game and just how really, really dynamite you were with the basketball in your hands. Go ahead, talk
Yeah.
about that a little bit.
Yeah. Yeah. I played my whole career, high school, college, and pro. I played with some great players. So I had to know how to change my style of play. Sometimes more shooting, sometimes assists, leading. I just had to be that leader. And that's, fortunate. That's the great thing about me. That's what I was capable of doing when I needed to. And I happened to play after the Nets. I signed a big contract with Portland Trail Blazers, played 2 years with 1 year and a half with them, and then boom, the coach got fired, and they traded me to Boston, where I played 5 years with the Celtics. It was a great run. We had some like bad, like 2, 3 years, but then we went when Jim O'Brien took over for Coach Pitino. We went to the Eastern Conference Finals when we lost to the New Jersey Nets. So
I
being in
remember.
the NBA, you gotta know how to change your game to benefit your team, and that's what I was able to do in the pros, and in college, high school. I did it every level, and you got to know when to shoot, when to pass, play defense, things that nature. I turned it on and off. I had an awesome basketball career, man.
Absolutely, one of the greats in New York City of all time as well too. In the conversation with Abdul-Jabbar and every great player that's
Yeah,
ever played there, your record and your accomplishments are absolutely undisputable. I want to talk about your freshman year at Georgia Tech just a little bit
yeah,
because I want people to see the impact of what a great player you were. Now we talked a little bit about John Sally, Dalrymple, Price, that group they had, which was a great
yeah,
team. They were in the Final Four and made a run and did some great stuff, but Georgia Tech really wasn't anybody, they had kind of been, you know, got down a little bit,
yeah,
and Dennis Scott was great, but, Brian Oliver, nobody really knew who Brian Oliver was until you came and then Lethal Weapon 3 formed. And so
yeah,
talk about Lethal Weapon 3, talk about those guys, and talk about the time because you walk in the door and they go to the Final Four. I mean,
yeah,
we're talking
yeah. It was
impact. We're talking immediate impact. Dennis Scott had been a guy
yeah,
that didn't train hard his whole time. He was a guy who kind of took it, casually till he met you. And then, you just
yeah,
made
yeah.
everybody else on that team better. Talk about
Yeah,
that.
no, I just came in at the right time, because Dennis, after his junior year, coach was talking about his weight and his workout habit. He changed all of that because he probably wanted to go to the NBA.
Right.
And so he worked extremely hard. And Brian Oliver was a hard-nosed player, regardless. Well, two guard, rebounding and playing defense and scoring. And then they bring me in as a freshman. It was kind of done all over again, like when I was at Malloy. So I knew how to run the team, and I just wanted everybody on the team to respond to me in a positive way, and because I was a freshman, I was a known freshman, I was a number one player recruited, so I had to come in and just. So I always listened. About after the 10th game, things started to change. We was 10-0. So coach, just let me run the team after that. And it just got better and better with time with my work ethic and things of that nature. And then everybody everybody joining in and seeing that team at Georgia Tech my first freshman year was just a great bond. We had a great bond, and we still stay in touch with each other today.
That's
So
so cool. That's
it
so
was just
cool.
a great atmosphere to be in, not just playing ball, but just on campus and in the locker rooms. Everybody got along with everybody, and our chemistry it was so tight, and I think that after like I said, after the left tip game, I started getting it. I started running the team like I was at Malloy again. So it
You could
was,
see it. You could see it as
yeah,
a. I
yeah,
mean, I remember the game against LSU, where they had
yeah,
Shaquille O'Neal and
yeah,
another monster inside Stanley Roberts, and they were just
Rob, yeah,
really, really one of the most imposing NCAA front lines of all time. That
yeah,
was just
yeah,
a great, great basketball game, and when you guys got through that game, it was like there was a click, and everything
yeah,
started to roll and everything started to see it. But you could see your leadership really there because they gave you that respect as a freshman,
yeah.
and that was just because you were as good as you were. Let's talk
Yeah.
about going back to New York. Talk about some of
Yeah.
the great players you played against in New York.
Well, we talked a little bit. You brought their names up. Like after coming, being in the pros in the summers, you work out with Kenny Smith, Mark Jackson, Rod Strickland, Pearl, Washington, rest in peace. But those
Wow.
we used to play in the summer leagues in New York, and I got a lot of my game from those guys. I always try to give love back to the older generation, before me. And those guys was awesome. The Boo Harveys, uh, Derek Cheevers. He went to
He was
Holy
amazing.
Cross, played at Missouri.
He was amazing.
So
He was a great
those
player.
guys, in New York, we had so many great players. It's just to be in that world, and then when you get older, I was able to play with them guys and play against them guys in the summer coming home. So it was just a great feat.
I think Christ the King had Khalid Reeves
Yeah,
at the
Khalid
time.
Reeves.
So people will often go back in point guard lore to the
Yeah,
class of Pearl's class, where
yeah.
you had Kenny Smith, you had Mark Jackson, you had Pearl,
Mhm.
Alvin Lott, Kenny
Yeah,
Hutchinson. There were some
yeah,
unbelievable players. But what I say to people also is if you look closely at New York City at the time when Kenny Anderson was there, you're talking about Adrian Autry, Kenny Anderson, Khalid Reeves, Jamal Walker. And those are a loaded, loaded group also that was your
yeah,
contemporaries. And you were, you were a good distance from them, you know. But
yeah.
let's talk about Malloy a little bit as we close here because that's just such a great place that you and I have in common. What did the actual place of Malloy do for you?
Um, I'm gonna take away. It's not so much the basketball. It was just the just growing up playing the game of basketball, but in life, treating people the right way. I understand when I went to Malloy, I was ninth to 12th grade, so I learned, and I was growing up in a crazy time. That's a crack era in New York, in
Yes,
Left
it
Rack
was.
City.
Yes, it
So
was.
when I went there, it was and then we had different cultures that went to school there: Indian, Puerto Rican, Spanish, white, black. So I got a different life lessons, through school. And it was just great, man. And it was academically is one of the hardest schools in New York, definitely
The entire
in the
city.
state.
Yep,
So in the entire city.
no
So
doubt.
you had to do your schoolwork and you played basketball for the enjoyment of it. But I learned a lot from you, Coach Sutter, from Vincent Smith, from all our coaches. That I just it was just so awesome to be at Malloy playing there. Um, it, it goes, and I talk about it a lot. It doesn't leave me, through my wife. My wife always here, Malloy, Archbishop Malloy is, I talk about it a lot because that's 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 how I got to where I got to NBA. But I had to go through high school first, play at Malloy. I wouldn't want to go to all these prep schools now. I see a lot of New Yorkers go, oh, I can't do the work or whatever. I'm gonna go to prep school. I couldn't leave, and that's another thing. when I was thinking about going to school, I was like, no, I got to get in Malloy. So I took all these summer classes and things of that nature to get to, and I took the test and I passed, and I was so excited that I got to Malloy, So it's the world of me, man. Everybody know that. It's the world of me.
People don't realize what a diligent student you were. You had
Yes, they
after
don't.
school math help with Brother Terrence.
Oh my God.
Brother Terrence every day, and you never missed. And you never missed.
Nope.
Hey, we're going to let you go, but I want to let you know we've been doing this show. This is our 70th show. And this is going to go down as my favorite show of all time because I love you.
So,
and I've always,
love you too,
the time at our Malloy, time together is always a special, special focal point in my life. I'll never forget it. And as I said in the beginning, it's always been my great pleasure, my pride, my honor to have coached the GOAT, the best point guard in New York City history, Kenny Anderson. Kenny,
thank you, man.
love you, brother.
I love you. Love you, man.
Too,
stay
brother.
up, baby.
You stay well. Send me some players.
Thank you. All right.
Pete, unbelievable, Pete.
Good job, Coach.
NBA franchise player, Boston Celtics, unbelievable. And now we got to finish the show.
All right, here we go.
It's almost like we were done. So we're going to jump right into fish. Pete's ready. He's got the feed 'em fish up there. As I alluded to with Kenny, this is show number 70. And I just want to reiterate also, in the conversation of all the players in New York City, all the great players in New York City that have ever played high school basketball in New York City, Kenny Anderson is in that conversation as the greatest of all time. Abdul-Jabbar, Kareem, when he was Lou Alcindor, yes, he played there, and there's some other great, great players that have gone there, but unbelievable.
I was reading up on his career because I didn't know if I was going to be part of the interview or not. Man, his career is just awesome.
Yeah.
Just awesome.
Yeah, I mean, he walked in. He was the most sought after. My job, really, when I was at Archbishop Malloy, was to protect him. I took him everywhere. He couldn't go to a tournament by himself because there were so many leeches in the business that were constantly going after him.
Sure.
We went out to St. Rose in Belmar, in Rockaway Beach, one of the most remote places you could possibly be. And I sit there and I go, Coach, I got plans, can somebody else take Kenny? He goes, no, you have to go. And I mean, it's St. Rose in Belmar, Coach. Who's going to find him out there? I take him out. Who's in there? About 5 or 6 of them, right, standing there. Unbelievable. It was unbelievable. So in the zone, we got some NBA stuff to go out, and we're going to right now, we wanted to do it last show, but we didn't do it this show. We want to jump into this just a little bit because we're going to give you our Player of the Year awards in the NBA. And then we're going to take you into our NCAA stuff. But if we have enough time today, I don't know that we do, we might have to hold it over. But I want to take you through who I think our best coaches are.
All right.
I want to take you through who the best coaches in the NBA are currently, who the best coaches are former, who the best coaches in the NCAA are currently, who are the best coaches former. I don't know that we're going to get there, Pete, but let's take a run. All right. Right after Kenny, I got to start with rest in peace. We lost a good one this week, Pete. Tim Kacklemeyer, good friend and a parent of one of the players that I coached, Chris Kacklemeyer, who was my captain and also came back to Westfield State as an assistant coach to work for me. Great player, great young man, great family. Tim Kacklemeyer had a very, very brave fight at the end, and he was a warrior, an absolute warrior. I liked him as a person very, very much. He was a great family man, a great basketball person, and a great human being. We'll miss him very much. Kacklemeyer was part of a staff of mine that I refer to as the staff infection. Okay, we'll let you figure that one out as well. But Tim Kacklemeyer, please rest in peace. We have 2 rest in pieces. Al Attles, the great Golden State Warrior, and a mentor to my good friend Adonal Foyle, who I'm hoping we're going to have on soon as well. He was 6 decades with the Warriors, just an absolute ambassador for the NBA, great player, and he was tough as nails. Unbelievable. His name was the Destroyer. And that'll give you an idea of how he played, what his whole thing was like, and his whole acumen was just unbelievable on the court.
Sounds pretty nails to me.
Yeah, he was unbelievable. He was a coach. He was a general manager, a player, and an NBA ambassador for the Warriors over that time. Unbelievable. All right, we're going to kick off right now. And while we have the Golden State Warriors on the tip of my tongue, we're going to light it up, Pete. And so get ready. All right, if we get some calls on this one, you let me know. But right now, we're going to give you our awards for the NBA coming up. And right now, we're going to put it right in the face of all of these people who were involved in this, and we're going to tell you right now, MVP of this upcoming year is going to be none other than the Boston Celtics' Jason Tatum. And I'm going to tell you what they did to him in the Olympics was terrible. What they did to him in the Olympics was unprofessional. And what they did to him in the Olympics was humiliating. And my new name for Steve Kerr is Steve Curtsy. Okay? Go put your pink Nikes on and roll over there and bow to your corporate emperors, okay?
Woo.
Because that is not good what you did to that young man. He's one of the best players in the game right now. In the zone, calling it right now, Jason Tatum, MVP. Who's going to be the Rookie of the Year, Pete? None other than Zach Edey. Now everybody's on board with that. The gambling people, the coaches, everybody's on board. They say Edey's going to be number one.
Smooth
I'm
as
going to
ice
go
cream,
Defensive
Zach Edey.
Player of the Year as well. I'm going to stick with Victor Wembanyama. We get some heat on that Steve Kerr stuff, let me know, Pete, because I would absolutely like to get involved in that a little bit more. That was totally, totally uncool. Should never, ever have happened and should never, ever be repeated. Okay, NBA Fish, let's cool down a second. Let's take a breath because we don't like it. I mean, he's a Celtic. We don't like seeing that happen, but I wouldn't want to see that happen to anybody. All right. We have NBA draft busts. All right. We're going to just walk through a couple of them. Jay Williams out of Duke. Round 1, pick number 2. Wasn't supposed to be riding a motorcycle. That's why he's on ESPN right now. Amari Stoudemire, Carlos Boozer, and Caron Butler were drafted after him. Number 2, Kent Benson of Indiana. I love this guy as a high school guy growing up. He was part of that NBA team that, lost like 1-2 games in 2 years, coached by Bobby Knight. He was round 1, number 1 pick, and I don't think he turned out to be a huge bust, but he did have a ton of injuries. The Milwaukee Bucks drafted him, and 2 minutes into his career, his jaw was broken by a punch by none other than Kareem Abdul-Jabbar. He averaged 9.1, 5.7. Played on 4 teams in 11 seasons, though. Sean Bradley, BYU, another one of those big 7'5" guys that we talked about with issues and all that other stuff. Philadelphia 76ers, round 1, pick number 2. Penny Hardaway and Jamal Mashburn were taken after him. Chris Washburn, NC State. I don't think you would call this a bust because everybody was high on Washburn. Everybody would have picked Washburn here. The Golden State Warriors took him with the pick 3. And Mark Price, Dennis Rodman. There's a few guys in there, but I don't know if I'd call that a bust. His career certainly was a bust, but I don't know that. If you're drafting people at that time, we'll see. Steve Stepanovich was drafted by the Pacers, round 1, pick 2, injured his whole career. I don't think that, Clyde Drexler and Byron Scott were drafted after him. That hurts. Stromile Swift. Sometimes you get drafted on your name. And if this guy was named Joe Smith, he wouldn't have been drafted this high. But his name was Stromile Swift from LSU, round 1, pick number 2 by the Vancouver Grizzlies. And that's why the Grizzlies are still hovering around that bad spot. They haven't been able to get ahead. Part of that is because you make bad draft decisions. Okay, Joe Smith from Maryland, we just mentioned him. Another young man that I was fortunate to coach against when I was at Colgate. He was at Maryland. They were the number 1 team in the nation. I think they beat us by 60. Round 1, pick 1, Golden State Warriors. They go Rafe LaFrentz and Kwame Brown after that. I could see that. Adam Morrison from Gonzaga. Yeah, he wasn't very good. Okay, let's talk about the politics of dancing, Pete. We're talking about bipartisan. This is what they call it now. I love that word, bipartisan. Okay, that's when you know you're really gonna get screwed. Okay, when you hear this.
Both sides coming at you.
And I'm never been a big NCAA fan. I've never been on their side really. You and I have hit them pretty hard and given them a lot of shots over the time. But I think I'm going to hang with them on this one because this is where you have no business. Okay, because you have no business because your business is dirty business, and you have no business coming in here telling everybody else to clean up their business when your business be as dirty as your business is. Okay, but let's go. Marsha Blackburn and Jeff Merkley, Republican, Blackburn, Democrat, Merkley. All right. Now, bipartisan. Grab your hat. Hold on to your wallet. NBA relationship with Rwanda dictator Paul Kagame. As the NBA started out with their efforts, and I applaud these efforts, to start a league outside of North America, which is now called Basketball Africa League. Okay? Obviously, there were some pieces over there. Now you're dealing in some places with some guys who are rough and tough, but I don't does the United States Senate and Congress, do they think that they don't deal with a lot of rough and tough people? Do they think that they don't do a lot of stuff that's involved with this stuff? So I don't know how they tell everybody how to do their business. And the NBA is not responsible for every single person in the world who happens to run a country. They want to start a business there. Is the United States stopping everybody from starting businesses in Rwanda? I don't think so. So they're doing an investigation that will give the NBA full understanding that nothing will ever come of this because they're going to investigate it. Go back, look at all the investigations that you've seen them do just recently. They're going to look into this. We're going to look into that. We're going to look at a bullet that just whizzed by this guy's ear. We're going to look into all of this stuff. But right now, we got to focus on the NBA and the bad stuff that they're doing, trying to start a league in Africa, which I think, personally, could have a lot of good. I think it could have a lot of good.
Here's the
All
problem. Right. The government ain't getting their cut of it. That's the problem.
That's
the problem. It's like a protection racket.
That's exactly what you're talking about, really. I really believe that.
And the executive action actually does. Executive branch does the work.
And when they say, "Well, we're going to start an investigation and we're going to do this," they're just trying to muscle people.
Yeah.
They're just trying to muscle people. And as Pete said, where's they want to wet their beak.
Yeah.
They want to wet their beak too, just like the guy in The Godfather. All right, we're ready to give you our top 15 NBA coaches current, and we'll give you the top 15 former. So if you're current, that means you go on the current list and you can't be on the former list. If you're former and you can't be on the current list.
Until you're on the current list again.
You have guys like Popovich, and you have some guys here. And we'll just talk about one of the people that we left off the list because we're in the zone, and we don't like it when you get us upset. We don't like it when you tick us off. And now you ticked us off, Steve Kerr, and so now you're going to get it. Rick Carlisle, number one, the Pacers. Unbelievable job. Why I picked him number one is because last year, NBA stats, the job of a coach, just simplify it. Offensive job of a basketball coach is to be able to get your guys open looks. And when they got their guys 31 open looks per game, I think that's an unbelievable stat. When everybody else in the NBA is running at the 20, 21, 22 level, you're 10 more open looks than everybody else in the league because you have great offense. That's why I picked Carlisle first. Number two, Eric Spoelstra with the Heat. What I like the most is Heat culture. Right now, there's been talk of them trading Jimmy Butler and moving him out, and I don't know what that's going to do to the dynamic of their team. If it brings in some really good players, that might help, but there's been some talk about that. I wouldn't really jump into that if I was them because he's a really, really good player. Number two, Eric Spoelstra of the Heat, though. Number three, Michael Malone of the Nuggets. We've talked about our CHSAA connection. But the Denver Nuggets are former champions and had a very, very good repeat year. They weren't able to go back-to-back, but you're talking about having one of the best players in the world and really, really doing a good job managing that whole lineup. And I thought, sometimes you're a good coach when you got all your guys there and everything's going well and you can be a really good coach. But when you get tested as a coach, and like Michael Malone did earlier in the season, he got tested a little bit because some of his guys got hurt, some of his guys got injured. And that was a true test, and I thought he did a great job of holding that whole thing together. Tom Thibodeau of the Knicks, he's got in the MASCAC background, so we're, really, really fond of Coach and his success, but also one of the best defensive coaches in the league right now. Absolutely one of the best defensive coaches in the league. I might put him up there as the best defensive coach in the league if he could possibly get Julius Randle into a defensive stance. Jason Kidd of the Mavericks. I really love the improvement in him as a coach. Started out young as a guy, former great player, got him a job, but unlike some of the other guys who've gotten that jobs, he's sustained and he's done very well. Took the Mavericks on a great run last year. I'm really excited about Jason Kidd, and I loved Jason Kidd as a basketball player. Chris Finch from the Timberwolves. He's got them flying at rarefied air, and they've never been up this area, and I've got to give him credit. You know, a really, really good job he's done with this team. They're young. They've got some great pieces. They've got Anthony Edwards, who many consider one of the up-and-coming stars in this young NBA. Chris Finch is doing a great job out there. I'm going to go Ime Udoka in the 7th spot. Pete, remember him from the Celtics?
Yep.
Got jammed up over with the Celtics, had to leave the Celtics. Could you imagine if that hadn't gone down, the career path that his career would have taken with the Celtics, now having a chance to run multiple national championships, and now he's in Houston with the Rockets, but he's doing a very good job, and I would think that the Rockets might make the playoffs this year.
Is that a rinse and repeat though? You know, come off one coaching job, rinse him off, repeat him into Houston?
That was 100%. But that wasn't even a rinse and repeat. I mean, he got fired at Boston like one day, and then the next day he's in Houston.
Right.
I mean, he just skipped a few cycles.
All right, spin dry.
He skipped a few cycles, if you ask me. But hey, you know, all power to it. You know, that's the way the NBA works, man. The NBA just, when you say recycle, the NBA says, what's that? You know, that's all they do. That's all they do. Let's go number 8, Mark Daigneault for the Thunder. Massachusetts resident, doing a great job, has a young, talented team, and they got a good shot this year. I'd be interested to see what happens with them in the West. I could see them, you know, doing some really, I see them continuing to rise. I see the Grizzlies making a move this year with John Morant being back and the big fella Zach Edey combining for a nice combination there. I think that could happen over there in the West, but Mark Daigneault's done a great job with the Thunder. Billy Donovan, when we talk back-to-back with the UConn Huskies and Coach Hurley, the last guy to do it was Billy Donovan. He's been in the pros for a while since, and he's with the Chicago Bulls right now, and they're struggling, but he does a good job. I watch his teams play. Nick Nurse, 76ers, they're going to have a shot to really challenge the Celtics this year. I hate to say it, but they've brought in Paul George, Andre Drummond, and they've got some pieces with Joel Embiid and Tyrese Maxey. That's a tough lineup, folks. The Celtics better be ready, and that's a lineup that can grind. If they stay healthy, that's going to be tough. Budenholzer over in the Suns, you know, they got a whole bunch of problems over there, and I don't blame the coaches all the time for what I consider to be the ineptitude of some of the general managers. I didn't think they should have brought in Bradley Beal because he just kind of clogs up what they're doing there. They really needed some help up front, and the guy that they let go, I thought, you know, was solid there. So I don't know. Joe Mazzulla, a lot of people might contest this, but Joe Mazzulla, going to put him in the 12th spot here because he got a ring. And as much as it's, you know, you talk about it's easy to do this and it's easy to do that. It's not easy to coach a really, really good team because there's a lot of room to slip. There's a lot of room to go. All right, Greg Popovich with the Spurs. Really, you know, we're doing this based on what he used to be, you know, because right now the Spurs are with Victor Wembanyama. They're buried down there in the bottom of the standings and just not, you know, doing great at all. You know, I wouldn't even consider him on the list because we're talking about current right now. But obviously with his great success, yes. But right now and his social justice warrior status right now is just, you know, it's a drag. It's a drag on the entire enterprise, to be honest with you. Just do basketball, folks. Kenny Atkinson from the Cavaliers. I like Kenny Atkinson, Long Island guy, good guy. And the Cavaliers are doing some good stuff, and they don't have as much talent as everybody else. So when you see somebody doing more with less, that's a good coach. All right, Jamal Mosley from the Magic, we're going to pick him next. They got some problems over there with the Magic. They really need to commit to bolstering that lineup and getting them ready to challenge if they want to challenge. Right now, they're a mid. They're a mid-NBA team. They're not in the bottom like the Pistons and the Spurs and the Washington Wizards. They're not in that bottom. But they're certainly not in the top with some of the great teams up there, the Celtics, the 76ers, the Denver Nuggets. They're not in that category as well, so they're a mid. If they want to get out of the mid, they're going to have to make a move to get out of the mid. All right, that closes us down with our top 15. Now we're going NBA coaches all time, former. Number 1, Phil Jackson. I went with Phil Jackson. This was a really hard one for me, 1 and 2, because it was really, really hard because I wasn't alive for a whole lot of the other guys' stuff, but man, that record is absolutely incredible. He'd break out the cigar on you. The Boston Garden fans loved it. He would burn that cigar, and that meant you were burned up too. Okay, I'm going to go with Red Auerbach in the number 2 spot. Yeah. I really, really always was a Celtic fan growing up. Celtics and Knicks, which was kind of a dichotomy of life there, but that's what it was. That was the reality of it. I love the Celtics. I love John Havlicek, Dave Cowens. I love their gritty play because that's the way I played. So I think sometimes when you look at this, you look through your own lens and you look at something that mirrors you and something that represents you, and that's what you go with. All right, so we got Auerbach in the 2 spot. Pat Riley, number 3. Pat Riley, number 3. Unbelievable what he did to the game. Because as it was Magic and as it was Larry who put that NBA on their back and carried it, you also had some guys in Armani suits who made the NBA look unbelievable, classy, where you used to have guys in sweaters and they'd be sweating on the sidelines and the college guys are chewing on towels and all this other stuff. What they wanted to do is they replaced those guys with Pat Riley and Jay Wright. We want guys in Armani suits. We want guys that look the part. We want guys who are respectable and dignified in the spot. And that's what Pat Riley brought to the game. And I think his impact, besides the wins and all the championships, I think his impact on the game was his class and his dignity. And he also is a huge Bruce Springsteen fan. And I've been at Springsteen concerts with him. So, Coach, if you need some heat, if you need some help down there in Miami, I'm available for casual dating. Okay, we've got in the number 4 spot, Larry Brown. Larry Brown had been in more cities than People's Express back in the days. But my God, when he showed up, whether it was in a collegiate level at Kansas or UCLA, your team was going to go. And in the NBA, over the course of that really long season, he did an unbelievable job with some of those teams that he coached as well. And what I'm saying here is if I got one game to coach, and I'm calling out somebody's name, Pat Riley, you know, it'd be a great name to call, but also Larry Brown. Larry Brown was a technician. Larry Brown was a great technician. All right, Chuck Daly, number 5, with the Pistons, the bad boys. They brought a persona. They brought a style of basketball there, and Daly was also in the Pat Riley mold. You couldn't find a guy better dressed than that. And when we talk about dignified, we look about Frank McGuire, the great South Carolina, North Carolina coach, was on the best dressed list for many, many years in a row. We're talking about the Hollywood, the Blackwell's best dressed list. And Frank McGuire was on that list many, many times. That set the tone. Then it slipped a little bit, and then you brought back guys like Chuck Daly, and you brought guys like Pat Riley, who looked unbelievable on the sidelines and looked like stars themselves. Red Holzman from the New York Knicks growing up, Willis Reed, Walt Frazier, Earl Monroe. It doesn't get any better than that. And Holtzman was an unbelievable, very quiet, very humble guy. You didn't see him give a lot of press conferences and stuff like that. But the Knicks won. They took over New York City. Unbelievable in 1969. It was the miracle. The Mets, the Knicks, everybody was going wild in New York in 1969. And as a 9-year-old kid, you began to believe in miracles. And Red Auerbach and his group of Knicks were responsible for giving a young boy, to this day, now at the age I'm at, I still believe in miracles. I still believe in miracles. Jack Ramsey with the Blazers, Dr. Jack Ramsey. If they got doctor in front of your name and you're a basketball coach, you're a pretty smart guy. And he did with the Portland Trailblazers, unbelievable, and I loved him. Again, one game, one guy, Jack Ramsey be an unbelievable pick. K.C. Jones from the Celtics. K.C. Jones, unbelievable championships, Coach Larry Bird. And there's a great story of an end-of-game situation where they run to the bench, timeout. K.C. Jones is in there fervently with the clipboard, drawing up a play, and he's got everybody moving around, got everybody in pieces, and Larry Bird turns to him and goes, K.C., just throw me the ball in the corner, and I'll end it. And they wound up putting down the clipboard and say, okay, throw it to Larry in the corner. Larry goes to the corner, boom, game over. Okay? Don Nelson of the Mavericks. Don Nelson of the Mavericks, a lot of wins there for Coach Nelson of the Mavericks. Unbelievable. Lenny Wilkins with the Sonics. Jerry Sloan, 11 with the Jazz, the pick and roll, Stockton and Malone. Again, you go through all of this NBA lore and you just have these pieces that you pick out and these coaches that were involved in it and responsible for it. I never saw anybody teach pick and roll as well as Sloan, Gordon Chiesa, and the staff that they had with the Utah Jazz. Unbelievable. Rudy Tomjanovich from the Rockets, unbelievable run that he had with the Rockets. Kenny Smith, Clyde Drexler, Hakeem Olajuwon, unbelievable. Mario Elie from AIC was on that team as well. People don't realize back in the day, I told every single Division I coach that I knew, you have to take Mario Elie. Nobody would listen. We went and we gave him to Jimmy Powell, who was from Parkchester in the Bronx. He came to AIC, and he might be the greatest Division II player of all time. Spent years in the pros also with the Houston Rockets. Hubie Brown wasn't a basketball player, but boy, he could coach. Coached with the Hawks for many, many years, and was, when I say tactician, Hubie Brown, X's and O guy. Bill Sharman with the Lakers. He was the guy that got Chamberlain to buy into, and this was unbelievable when they did it. He said, you scored 50 points, 100 points, you scored all these points, but you never won a championship. And he convinced Chamberlain to take on less of an offensive role and become an absolute dominant defensive player. And that's exactly when the Lakers, Jerry West, and all those other great players they had, Gail Goodrich, that's when they got over the hump. Sharman got the Lakers over the hump when all of those years they lost and lost and lost. Doug Moe. I'm going to go Doug Moe, Denver Nuggets, because his offense was unbelievable. I loved watching the Denver Nuggets play back in the day. But he also has the greatest single line of any coach in any sport who's ever been fired. The Denver Nuggets fired Doug Moe, and his comment to the media was, here today, gone to Maui. And he took off for Hawaii and had an unbelievable time going out there in Hawaii. Unbelievable. All right. Pete, we got about 9 minutes left. So I'm going to go through as much of this as I can. Maybe I'll save the college coaches for next week. We'll see how we go. But in our NCAA fish, we wanted to give you Player of the Year, Rookie of the Year, and we're going to give you Coach of the Year. We've said before, we are already picking the UConn Huskies to take a three-peat. A, we're excited about it. B, I want to see it happen in my lifetime. And C, I really, really want to see this UConn team and where it can go and what it can do. Watch Liam McNeely and watch Samson Johnson on this team. Unbelievable. My preseason awards, Player of the Year, I'm going to split it right now until I get better intel on what's going on here. R.J. Davis from North Carolina returns from North Carolina, Stepinac High School in Westchester. I got to be honest, it's amazing the improvement that Stepinac High School has made, now sending Boogie Flant to Arkansas, R.J. Davis at North Carolina. It's amazing that Stepinac and the growth that they've made, because when I was at Sacred Heart, and I'm going to be honest with you folks, if we lost to Stepinac, we had to practice twice the next day. So we're going to go out with Mark Sears from Alabama and R.J. Davis as our A and B. All right, we kind of punted there, but those are two great guards who are going to have unbelievable years, and they're going to lead their team to really, really good stuff. My Rookie of the Year, I'm going to go with Cooper Flagg, although keep an eye on Ace Bailey, keep an eye on Dylan Harper at Rutgers. As Governor Phil Murphy said, we're from Jersey, and you're not, okay? And so right now, Jersey's got a little bit of a buzz about it. Coach of the Year, until they knock him off, until they get him off the throne, Pete, it's Danny Hurley. Danny Hurley. All right, I wanted to go through this with you because it's funny and it's cool, and it's what we talk about a lot of times on this show is the coaching carousel. But I wanted to jump you inside one of these episodes that somebody did. They did a good story on it on ESPN, I believe, and it's really, really cool to walk through this whole thing and see what happens, okay? So here's how we start. Right prior to the beginning of the NCAA tournament, SMU fires their coach, Rob Lanier. He had won 20 games that year and had, by all means, a pretty good season. Now, he's a St. Bonaventure guy, and so I'm a little bit biased on this because I don't like to see that happen to my Bonnie guys who are great, unbelievable. He's a great Bonner man, Rob Lanier. But they go ahead and fire Rob Lanier. And if you want to fire somebody and you do it in political fashion, you do it that day right before the NCAA tournament starts because there's 16 games going on that's going to make everybody forget about what you just did.
It's like the Friday news dump at the White House.
If you weren't 100% conscious-wise in this whole thing of saying, yeah, you drop it that day. that's the day you drop it. That's how we know you're fugazi, because you dropped it that day. All right, but let's move on. All right, so they drop Rob Lanier, okay, and then go and grab Andy Enfield from USC. Now, you sit there and say, but SMU's going into the ACC next year. Obviously, it's a challenge. It's a new dimension for that program. But they went ahead and grabbed Andy Enfield from USC. So they filled their vacancy that they created with the firing of Lanier with Andy Enfield. And they feel like this is the guy that's going to take them forward. All right? Now USC needs a coach. Coach from Arkansas, who was doing really, really well at Arkansas, Musselman, decides, I'm a Hollywood guy. I'm Hollywood. I'm going to go out to the West Coast and take the USC job. So Musselman leaves Arkansas, and he goes to take the USC job. Enter John Calipari, who was at Kentucky and now decides it's better to be at Arkansas with Jerry Jones and the Purdue Chicken people. So he leaves Kentucky. Kentucky opens, and they grab Mark Pope, one of their former players and the head coach at BYU. And I applaud Kentucky for this hire because I think Coach Pope has a really good basketball mind, especially offensively. I watched his BYU teams, and I was very, very impressed with them. Very, very impressed with them. But now Kentucky goes, he fills Kentucky, now BYU is open. And BYU does the unfortunate thing of hiring somebody who is off the carousel. They brought in somebody who was in the Phoenix Suns organization, Kevin Young, and gave him the job. Now, I'm not qualifying that good hire, bad hire, but that's what stopped that carousel from moving. But right there, you can see the 5 or 6 machinations that went in, and that just happened when one AD decides to walk in and fire his basketball coach. Okay, FYLY, Pete, I think we'll probably close with this. We'll give you 2 to close with. We're going to save our NCAA coaches for next week. I love it when we get to save stuff for next week because it cuts down on the amount of work that I got to do in order to get ready to keep everybody entertained for an hour. It's not as easy as everybody thinks. Okay,
Yep.
Under FYLY, and I say this, FYLY is first year, last year. There are a group of people were, with good reason, talking about this year's draft as not being as great as some of the others that we've had. And I think over time, that might pan out to be pretty true. We talked about it earlier when we did the draft. We said we thought they missed in some places, but to say that the draft was as good as some of the other drafts probably would be disingenuous, and we wouldn't try and make that claim. But this year's draft, if it goes the way it's according to go right now, oh my God. It will be possibly one of the best drafts in all of NBA history. All right? And so when we say FYLY, hashtag, we say first year, last year. Number 1, Cooper Flagg, 6'10", out of Duke. Showed up at some of the USA trials and absolutely tore it up. Really, really excited about watching this young man. Really, really close to Christian Laettner as a player, but maybe a little more depth to his offensive game. He can take it a little bit further outside than Laettner can, I believe. All right, VJ Edgecombe from Baylor, very high on this young man. Right now, NBA draft board, in the zone. We might, I can't say yes or no because I want to watch the year, I want to evaluate it, but based on what I've seen right now, we might put VJ Edgecombe in the number 1. Ace Bailey from Rutgers, unbelievable talent. Coach Peichel secured a future for the Rutgers program here with Ace Bailey, Dylan Harper. We're from Jersey, and you're not. Derek Queen from Maryland. People are sleeping on this kid a little bit, and he's also got Reese up there with him. Queen and Reese, they're going to do good things. They're going to do really good things. I think Maryland will be one of the teams, and especially in a buoyant, what I consider to be a buoyant Big Ten. When I say buoyant, your ability to rise is pretty good right now. I think Indiana rises, and I think Rutgers can rise, and I think Maryland can rise. Ian Jackson from UNC, former Bronx Bomber out of Cardinal Hayes. Really excited to watch this man in a North Carolina uniform. He has a rocket ship that he takes off on when he goes to the basket. Unbelievable. Unbelievable athletic ability. Okay? Leah McNeely, aforementioned, UConn. You're going to love this guy, Pete. This is diving on the floor for loose balls, hustling everywhere, shoots the lights out of it, and knows how to play. Give and goes, backdoor cuts, always moving, always cutting. Fits into this UConn thing like peanut butter and jelly. It's unbelievable how well this is going to fit. And I think he's going to be amazing. Jaleel Bethia from Miami really could show up on the draft board as well because he's got an NBA-style game already. Donovan Freeman, Syracuse, 6'9". This was a great get for Syracuse. And they also have a young man out there, Jayan Anthony, who is Carmelo Anthony's son. If they're able to bring both of those young men into the Dome, I think they're going to, Adrian Autry and his group got a really, really good thing going. And Adrian Autry, the coach of the Syracuse Orange right now, and Kenny Anderson played against each other in 2 unbelievable basketball games, and that was one of the best basketball guard matchups I've ever seen in my life. Love to get Coach Autry on the show so we could discuss some of that time when he was my opponent at Talentine, and we were both really running the city from the Queens side, and they were running the city from the Bronx side. Okay, we got Jonuel Boogie Fland out of Stepinac. We mentioned him going to Arkansas. I think he can do some great stuff. Okay, Pete, I think we're out of time.
Yeah, pretty
I
close.
think we're out of time. All right, I'll run through what Andy Katz says are the top 10 fan bases in all of college basketball. If you got this fan base, you got a shot. Number 1, Kentucky. Number 2, to the UConn Huskies, great credit.
Yep.
We go Kansas, number 3. Duke Huskies. The Duke people, I know the Huskies are there, but the Duke faithful are right there as well. The Blue Devil people are right there. I'm surprised they're at 4. Purdue, 5. Illinois, 6. North Carolina, 7, a little low there. Indiana, I've been in Indiana for a game. It's unbelievable. Arkansas and Iowa State. Pete, today was my favorite show, I think. 70th, but my guy Kenny Anderson, that is as close to a basketball son as I have in this business. I love that kid, and it was my absolute honor to have coached him, work with Jack Kern, and be part of that Archbishop Malloy franchise that we spoke about. Pete, we'll see you next week. We're in the zone.